records. This was basically the value of my alternate key field. And I put it in alphabetical order. All right. This is in there, and there's a template that you will populate. You'll see this when you watch the tutorial video, how I do this. You will see this in one of the steps of, I think it's 2C or something like that, of the tutorial in the workbook. It spells out exactly what you need to do this. It's very much like how we built a query for the lookup on a category relationship, very much like that. But this one, instead of writing the SQL code in there or changing the SQL code in there, you could actually go into the query view. And in the query view, there's a template. And I step you through how to fix it, okay? Now, I'm going to warn you right away. This is one of the more involved things you will have to do in this tutorial, is setting up your search bar, okay? I made it as simple as I possibly could, but there is some typing that you're going to have to do. But go through it, be careful with it. If you have trouble, start over. Do it first before you do anything else, because then once you've got it working, then you know it's working good. If it's working good, you could go in here and move to another one, and it would flip to another record. And you know it's doing it by what you see here at the bottom of the screen, this 12 of 31. See how it moved to that one? And this is my way of navigating through the individual records. Each record is shown at a time. All right, it's not showing a list of records like we were used to seeing in the data sheet. This is called a single record form. All right, now there is a way to do it in multiple, and we'll learn that toward the end of the semester, okay? But for now, our subject tables are going to be built using this form. There's a BAL object called FRM, curly brackets, subject, and you will use that very much like you use TBL, curly brackets, subject. And you will bound this form to its corresponding subject table. And then you'll go in, and using this thing, you have this thing, it's called a tab control in here. This tab control allows you to group fields together. So if I went in there and looked at this raw record, I would see the name and the mailing label and the address and city. I would see fields for all these things. I would also see a preferences field. That's a multi-pick field. I'd also see payment card fields. In other words, the customer's payment card that they use. And they keep putting in notes about the thing. There are category relationships that have been set. Look at that. It works just like it did in the data sheet. When you did it in that table, when you put that foreign key in the subject table, now when you build a form, it still works the same way. It still comes across as a lookup form. And you even get that ghost image, which will bring up your lookup form. Cool, huh? Isn't this already looking like an application? Wow, this is neat. Remember those fields that said notes, attachment, and data revisions, they had a star on it. They said, don't remove them. This is why. Those ones are here for you automatically. Those pages of this tab control are there for you. And you can see it populates in with any data that you may have put into there. Okay. If I put something in here right now, and guess what? This is actually rich text, so I could do anything. I could turn it, and I can make it bigger and make it bold and anything else. And you could do all kinds of things and just type all day. It's like a little word processor. A lot easier to use than a data sheet, isn't it? Looks a lot better. Here's my multi-pick one. Okay, I click on that. I even get its lookup form, and I could go in and multi-pick these. If I want a brand new record, I could come down here to the bottom where it's got this little arrow and a star, and I hit that. And if you poise on anything, it'll open up a tooltip telling you what it's about to do. And it says new blank record. I click on that, and now I'll put a new blank record in there. And if I go in there, I can start typing in all the information. You see, I made the ones that are unique, the ones that are required, I gave it a yellow border around it so it stands out. Yeah, it's got this message in here, and I told you don't need to do that, okay? But if you want to, you can. You could also put a little thing next to it that says required. I'll show you something like that in a little bit. But anyway, this is what you're going to build in the tutorial. And then you're going to do something very much like it in the assignment for this, which I'll get to next. Now, there is a couple special fields in here that I want to point out. We built fields. And I said a field cannot be dependent on other fields except for the alternate key, the fields that are in the alternate key. But I may have a situation where I want to have a field that has something based on the value that another field takes on. I said, you'll see in the tutorial, one of the things I do is I want to have a field where if the customer is over the age of 55, I want to know that. All right. Right now I have a birth date field. I could create what's called a derived field. Now, this is not a field that exists in the table, really. All right. I'm sorry, it's called a derived control. All right. All these things that you see here are called controls. They're text box controls. And even the labels are called label controls. And label controls get their value from the caption that I put on my field. So that's one of the reasons why I ask you to caption this. Remember, I told you, put a caption in the description. Look on this one. Here's the caption. And if I look down here at the bottom, name of customer, blah, 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 unique and required, there's my description. All right, that's where they're coming from, is the fact that I put that back in the table. It inherits it here. That's called inheritance. All right. So again, a lot of this I'm saying right now, I also say in the video, watch it. Please go through the tutorial like with a fine-tooth comb, both the video and the instructions that are in the workbook. Really learn this part. If you do, I guarantee you, you will make really nice applications and I'll be proud of you. All right. But anyway, this derived control now, what it does is it determines how many years old they are. Okay, at least this year, how many years old they're going to be. I've made a really simple formula here. It holds what's called an expression, which is the same thing as a formula. It's like an Excel formula that basically references this control, just like you would reference a cell in Excel. It's referencing this control to get the date, converting the date into a year, and then subtracting that year from this year to know how old they are. Okay. And then if they're over the age of 55, I make the background of that green. That's called a conditional format. Okay. There is a lot I had to do on this field to make this happen. Okay. But once you've done it once, it becomes pretty clear what you need to do. All right. I have an expression that calculates 59. I protected it so that people can't go in there and change it, even though it's allowing me to click on it right now. I can't change that. If I tried to, it wouldn't let me do it. Okay, I've locked it out. Okay, and then I made the background green. In the case it's over 55, I put a rule on it that says, now it's not a validation rule. It's what's called a conditional format. And I show you how to do that in the video. If I scroll through these, you'll see, let me go backwards so I can actually go to a record, or let me go to one here from the top. Let's go to that one. Well, yeah, he's over 55 too. Somebody not over 55. Yeah, here you go. This one's not over 55. It's only got a yellow background. Okay, and that's kind of actually the default value of this one. I always make my derived controls have a different background than the other ones, so people get a visual cue about what they really need to enter data into. Again, I could change values in here. That's the point of the whole thing. If I want to, I can manage things. I think you get the idea on that. There is another derived control on the payment card. That's the expiration date. Okay. Now, I'm sorry, it's not a derived control. This is actually a field itself. Okay. The expiration date of the credit card. But you can put a conditional format even on the regular fields that are attached to regular controls. This is something that confuses people a lot. And in fact, I always just say the field. All right. It's truthfully, this is a control that is bound to that field. You'll see that when you open up this thing in design view, it says what field it's connected to. All right. We call that bounding the field. Just like the form itself is bound to the record, each of these fields where you can enter data is bound to a field that's back in that table. You can kind of think of these controls, these ones right here, these what they call text box controls, as being windows into your database. All right. Now, don't want to confuse you too much. We had short text fields, we had long text fields. All right. These are called text box controls. It's not necessary that a text field has a text box control. These are text box controls that are used for all different kinds of fields. We have number fields, we have short text fields, we have memo fields, but they're still text box controls. Okay. But there are other controls. There's label controls, and you will see at the top when you go into your design view that there's a thing that shows you all the different kinds of controls that you have. And again, the tutorial will cover a lot of this. I just want to introduce the subject to you at this point. All right. So having said that, I'm going to close this one down and go to the homework assignment, so you know what you need to do on the homework assignment. By the way, I should point out too, for the tutorial, on the part where you have to set the query for the source of the find record control, all right, if you have problems with it, I have actually given you the select statement that works. Okay, so if you're in there and you're having all kinds of trouble and you can't figure it out, go back out of the query builder and just copy this one in and copy it into that record source. Okay, that will make it work for you. Okay, I also give you the one for assignment 3. All right, because you're going to have to do the same thing on assignment 3, but it's a different table that we're doing it on. So for that one, if you have trouble setting up the query that brings back the name of the customer, in this case, it's the name of your contacts, it's a contact list. Okay, if you're having trouble getting that to work, just go out here and copy this select statement and put it into the source, and it should work. And I would suggest, if it does work, go back and look at the query builder to see what it looks like, so you can figure out what you were doing wrong. All right, I hope that makes sense to everybody. And I will probably send you another email about the record source just to make sure you all get it. I want to close that down now, and I want to go to, well, let me just go out here. I want to go out to the homework assignment. Okay, so the homework assignment, I'm going to run it first in compile mode so you can see it. All right. And you can see it looks a lot like the other one, except there's some things that are a little bit different in it. All right. For one thing, I got this one that was unique and required. I just put a label up there that says unique and required. There is a label beside the labels that are generated with the text box controls. These are generated together. You can add other labels if you want to. And that's all I did, is I dropped a label in here. Again, I show you how to do that in the tutorial video. And you'll even see if I go to a new record, on this one, I didn't put those red unique and required on these. Okay, this is enough for me. All right, but you might be able to see too, I also added an attachment control to hold photos of the contact right there. Okay, one of the things I'm going to point out right now that's a little bit interesting on this, if you look here, I've got their name and I've got a mailing label that I made required fields. Okay, and that's together with things like about the type of family they are and relationship they are and all that. I figure those are all good to group together. Okay, but then I've got this thing called mailing. All right, now the reason I put the mailing label here is because, again, it's a required field. I want them to see it right away. They see this first page of the tab first, so they see it right away and they can fill it out. But it's also part of their mailing information, isn't it? So when I go over here to mailing, guess what? It's there too. You could have multiple controls that are attached to the same field. When I make a change in one place, it's going to change in the other. It's not like they're independent from each other. So here's a case where I actually have the same field. I have a field that looks like it's in there twice. It's really only in there once. It just has two different methods to change or manage its value. I just want to point that out because some people see that and go, there's not two mailing label fields in the table. How did you do that? Well, it's the same field. Okay, it's the same value. All right. If you look here, rolling whacker. If I change it to, maybe I make it whacker guy here. We'll move off of it so it actually saves it, and come over here, and you see now it's whacker guy there. Okay, and I could do the same thing from here back. It's like they're synced together from that point on. So everything else in here I think is fairly self-explanatory. I have already built the subject table for you in this. I have already built the relationships. Look at them. Look at the relationship window. Those of you who have been struggling to get the naming conventions right, look and see what I named the fields. You'll learn. This is how you learn. I'm giving you plenty of examples. All right. There's no excuse to be having bad naming conventions at this point. Okay. I've given you lots and lots of examples of how to do this. All right. On this one is your first little bit of extra credit that you could get. There is a special control. Boy, you can't see much of it, unfortunately. Maybe there's a better record that shows more of it. Let me see. Yeah, this one does. There's a special control called a web browser control. All right. If you try to use it, I've told you how to build a derived field. Boy, that's a bad one because it's not actually showing the derived field. This one is, and yet it should not show me. Yeah, there it is. There's the map. Okay. We will create a derived field. I'm sorry, I keep saying derived field. A derived control that basically will bring the information in from the mailing fields to create a URL that loads into this. And this is like a little browser then that's in this tab. Okay. Now try it. It may not work. And I'm just warning you about that. Okay. If you try it and you think you've done it right and it's still not, it may actually be your internet connection doesn't support it. I didn't realize that when I first put it together. All right. That sometimes the internet connections don't support it. I will still give you full credit if I think you did it right. Okay, so it's only worth 2 points. You may not think it's worth your time, but some of you guys have already lost a significant number of points. It's every little bit that you can do may help you. Okay, and those of you who are doing great, keep doing great. Try stuff like this. Okay, get ahead in the class. That's going to help you out. All right, so the assignment itself, I'll open it up and go through it with you really quick. And I think it's very self-explanatory. Again, you will use A03-01-yourname.accdb from this semester. It's out on the submits item too now. I realized I could do that. So it's out on the submit item for this. I will expose that after class here, the submit item for the next one, this A03, but it's also under the assignment item. Okay. Those of you who are not using Blackboard, I don't know how you're doing this class. I just don't get it, and I am not going to send you these files all the time. I did this the first few to get you started. Okay. You have to go out there. You have to take the responsibility to get your work files. So do that. Basically, you're going to create what I just showed you, that contacts thing. I give you good information about what I want you to do in that birth date and in the contact's anniversary. Those are the two derived controls that are in there. Okay, we're going to actually highlight their birth date and highlight their actually, are those if grade is in mind? Oh no, we're just using conditional formats here. Okay, I'm sorry, they're not derived controls. On the fields themselves, for the contact's birth date and the contact's anniversary, I want you to put, and it's the same rule on both of them. Okay, so if you do it on one, all you have to do is do it again on another one. You do a conditional format. The derived control is the map, is the address for the map, and I give you the exact expression. Okay, now again, one of the things you want to be careful of, and I told you this one of the other times, what if you copy from here and paste it into the property, it sometimes will put a carriage control line break. Okay, be careful with that. If you start having problems and it's not working, you might be better off just typing this whole thing in. I couldn't get it all in one line here. Okay, so I had to go over to spill over to the next line, but it shows how to do that, and it shows what other properties that you need to set. Okay, it also shows you what you need to do to protect it. To lock it up, to take off the tab stop if you don't want them tabbing into it, things like that. Okay, I tell you what to do on these. Okay, I am basically telling you exactly what to do on this. All right, but you have to do the work. And of course, I really want you to take time to make things look good. I give you some default colors and all that for the forms and its objects. You are free to do whatever you want as far as colors and things like that go. Okay, but you must use the tab control. You must organize your fields correctly. You must have a tab order, and I talk about tab order in the video quite a bit. Okay, that things move in a logical sense in the form. All right, and again, you must use that file that I gave you for this semester. Don't go pulling one out from the other semesters. It's not going to help you. All right, everything's been tagged and we know it. And please do not compile this file. I know some of you already know a little bit about how to do those kind of things. Don't. Just send me your ACCDB file and make sure it's the ACCDB file. Okay, please don't send me the L file. Okay, how many times I've said that? Please watch the extension on the file you're sending me. Make sure you're sending me the ACCDB file. All right, so having said that, next week, Tuesday, I want you all to get online again. we are going to start looking at data visualization. This Thursday, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. This Thursday is a lab night. It's your lab night to do the stuff for lesson 4. I will expose the tutorial videos and all that right after this. In fact, I know the tutorial, the lesson and the tutorial files are out there already. They've been exposed. The videos on YouTube, I will expose them right away. And I'll even expose the lesson for next week too. All right. So if you want to watch that before we meet, great. Okay. Whatever you do, watch the lesson for tonight. Otherwise, you're not going to know how to build forms. So do that and do the tutorial lessons too, obviously, where they're not narrated, but I go through the step-by-step that you get from the workbook. Follow along with it. If you go out to our class schedule, you will see now that you will still have labs, but we will have lecture nights where mainly the tutorial portion of it is pre-recorded that you'll watch after. I don't expect those nights that I'll be doing a lot of this. All right. I expect that I'll knock it out in 10, 15 minutes and then you'll go watch the videos. All right. But the other thing that's important about next Tuesday, I'm going to give you your first project too. I'm also going to give you your first extra credit assignment. So be on so I can explain those things to you. All right. I have recorded this. I will put it out there. What you'll see is L03 dash data dialog underscore instruction will be the name of the file. And I will send you the link in an email as soon as I get it uploaded to YouTube. Good. All right. And I haven't looked at the chat. I know, but let's see. Anything else? I think that's it. You're just thinking of Z's. Okay. Again, guys, utilize the Z's, but be gentle. All right. Be gentle. He is a good person and who really wants to see you do well, probably more than I do. And I really want to see you do well. Okay. Aziz and I went to lunch the other day. It was one of the nicest things that I've done in a long time, Aziz, by the way. I didn't tell you that. Okay. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and he is so into this class. It's ridiculous, you can learn a lot from him. Benjamin is going to be picking this up too as we go along. Benjamin, I don't want to volunteer you for too much here, but you could try him too. I'm sure if at the very least he could point you to the right thing to look at if you think you're having problems. So, but again, both you guys, thank you very much for helping me out this semester, and all of you, please. I think the average grade on the first assignment was 8 for both A0101 and A0102. It was 8 for those who actually turned it in. Okay. That's typical. Okay. It shows me that a lot of you are doing the stuff you do. It isn't easy to pick up the first time you do it. Okay. But you're going to get better at it the more and more you do it till you get to a point where you're going to feel like this is natural. Okay. It all makes a world of sense. Okay. But the key is you have to keep at it. Okay. Don't drag your feet. I always say, if you don't get going on this right after you watch the tutorial, if you don't get it going on the assignment and get that going, you're doing yourself a disservice because you got it fresh in your mind. Just go out and do it, and then you'll really know it. Okay. So any quick questions? Otherwise, I'm going to let you go, and please watch that video. If you can't get to it tonight, at least try to get to it before you try the tutorials for the next lesson. Nothing? Okay. Yeah.
I had it's not really related to class, so.
Okay, why don't you stay on, Catherine, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And Christelle, are you on? Guess not. Okay, well, Christelle, if you are on, I can't see everybody at once here because I got several things open. Maybe I could talk to you too after it, okay? But Catherine, yeah, please just stay on, okay? Otherwise, everybody else, thank you very much. And I'll see you next Tuesday night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's make sure everybody gets off here. Benjamin, you can stay on too if you want.
Dr. Huffman, I fixed the my grades issue. I added.
Oh, did you?
Yep.
So
I
what do you
added
think? What do you think happened? I didn't realize that there was. I didn't
Just
delete it.
blame it on the Ultra.
Okay, I didn't delete it.
No, I think with the Ultra sign in, it just been defaulted to whatever the institution has. So that's what
Okay.
happened.
Okay.
But
Well,
I just added that. So
it sounds like
students-
didn't sound like they're having that problem in other classes though. Maybe I did accidentally delete it. I don't know. I hope not. Everybody else who's on, please, I need to talk to Katherine alone. So please log off. This happens a lot.
Oh, it's nothing private.
Oh,
I
okay.
just didn't want to waste the
Oh,
students,
no,
the
that's
other
okay.
students' time.
That's okay. What do you need to talk about, Katherine?
I was wondering, does Microsoft Access interface with other like database management softwares?
Yes.
It does?
Yeah. In fact, what a lot of people do, because a lot of people, what I'm teaching you now about forms and reports, a lot of people really like that part of Access, but they don't like the database engine itself or the way they think it's too constraining in some of its functionality for actually managing tables or creating tables. So what they'll do is they'll go out and develop their data model in Oracle or Microsoft SQL usually, and then use Access. They basically just bring the data. It's called, what do they call that when they import a database from another database? It's like a transform or something like that, I think they call it. And basically then the forms become aware of the fields. They actually build forms right on top of the fields from a different database. What I've seen a lot is people will build an Access database, but there's a table that exists in a different database. Okay, believe it or not, you could create relationships between Microsoft Access tables and tables that are I'm sorry, Microsoft Access, tables and tables that are in other databases through the relationship builder. Okay. In fact, I've seen the other way too, where from other databases, they set a relationship back to a Microsoft Access table. So the answer is, yeah, the real answer is yeah, but it isn't always easy. Okay. It doesn't always work that smoothly. All right. I've seen a lot of times it has to do with the server that the database is on. Okay. It's not so much the software that's doing it, but the server it's on. One of the really interesting things, I'll talk about this toward the end of the semester, is you could separate your database from your application. In other words, all your tables and the relationships can be separated into a different file and that placed on another server. And then all you have to do is have the links from your objects to those tables. And again, it could be objects from Access, or it could be objects from other databases. It could be tables from other databases that Access is linking to. And there was something else I was going to say about that. And then you could even send the queries that you produce in Access out to the server. So that, let's say you build a query that you may have maybe a general purpose query that you want to use for other things beside the application that you built it for, and you're making your tables available to the world, but you want them to query them in such a way. I know we haven't talked much about queries other than to populate dropdowns, but there are ways you can use queries to create different views of your data, and you can actually store those queries at the server, and then people could run them from Excel, from Power BI, places like that. There's Microsoft actually has a tool called Microsoft Query that is built into Access. In fact, when we do the query grid, that's really Microsoft Query. It's actually integrated in Access. So good question, Katherine. It's something I'll probably talk a little bit more about toward the end of the semester when people feel comfortable with relationships and things like that. But yeah, it's a nice open environment. And one of the things that Microsoft has done a lot with lately is try to couple Access and Power BI together. That's their analytics tool. I've used it quite a bit. It's very, very good, but it also works with other ones that are out there in the world. So yeah, very open, a lot of interoperability. but sometimes it gets very frustrating, but things don't work just quite the way you think they should.
Yeah, the I did an internship over the summer, and
Yeah.
my main task was database management, and we had
Oh.
used Adept.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It a nightmare of
Yeah,
sorts.
I would never use that one. I hate to say it. Okay.
Yeah.
They want to act like they're the only ones ever put a database together. They're not that open. That's the problem. Microsoft, you know, it's interesting to talk about openness in Microsoft. Microsoft is usually the most closed guys around, but when it comes to databases and spreadsheets and that, things where data has to move between different environments or different applications, they are fairly open. They've done a pretty good job. Okay. I always say, if worse comes to worse, you could always get everything scrolled out of as what they call XML and bring it back into the other environment if it supports that type of XML. XML is a markup language. It's, if you ever go into the internet and look at the source for a page on the internet, you know, you'll see this really cryptic stuff come across the screen, and that's called a markup language. That's a markup language called HTML, but there's another version called XML that's more popular for data exchange, and everything that is in Microsoft Office is XML based. So they all can take their stuff they can all take XML code and render it basically so it works in their environment. Conversely, they could generate XML code for everything that could work in other environments. So very open on Microsoft, but that doesn't mean that doesn't mean it works with everything, because the other databases have to be fairly open. Now, if their data is separated into a SQL type database and an SQL structured database, there's usually no problem. It's only when it's some proprietary format for the data that you get into problems. Okay. And then there's things like where they don't use SQL, they use other methods. On some of those, you might have to actually have a translation method in order to get the data so that it works with access. Okay. Long explanation to a simple question.
Yeah,
I
no worries.
Did I record that? I
Yeah.
hope I recorded that.
Yeah,
I did.
yeah,
That was excellent. All right.
I did have a couple more questions.
Yeah.
And I think that your explanation segues really well into my next one, which was if I make like a table, or if I have something in like an Excel spreadsheet, can access
Yeah.
can access, I guess,
Yes.
reach in and open that file.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. In fact, we will do that toward the end of the semester. I will do that. I'll do a real simple demonstration of that. Okay. Yeah. But you could treat an Excel, a worksheet from Excel as if it's a table in Access, you know,
Okay.
and you can actually even set relationships to it. It's really interesting.
Yeah, the Access was kind of reminding me of like the VLOOKUP function in Excel.
Right.
How it, I guess, has the relationships between the files.
So that's interesting. That's an interesting observation, Catherine. Really, the VLOOKUP, what it tends to do is it mimics what you'd have in a one-to-many relationship. All right. But I would not call it a one-to-many relationship. Believe it or not, Microsoft has a database, a relational database model built into Excel. All right. If you ever look out there, there's a special format called the table format that will allow you, it basically lets you do things like have validation rules on the fields. Your cells act as if they're like a data sheet, basically. And you can have validation rules, and you can set relationships between things, and you can have multiple tables that have relation. And I've actually seen people mimic many-to-many situations that way. But I will tell you, I would never do anything worthwhile over in I would never try to implement a relational model in a spreadsheet. Okay. I don't, there are things that Microsoft did in Excel that I just question what their motivation was. You know, it's a problem with Microsoft's products that they try to be everything to everybody, you know, and by doing that, sometimes they violate real principles of what the thing is supposed to be about. I already told you that they have in Access, there is a field called a calculated field. All right. I say it's evil because it violates normalization principles doing that. You should never have a field that actually stores a value that was calculated from another field in the table. You know, you always use a derived control or derived field in a query to do the same, that kind of thing. You know, storing the value, if the value of the original changed and that rule was lost, now they're not in sync anymore. They don't have any meaning, you know, and then people start saying, what's that other field about? By the way, Aziz and Benjamin, both you guys, make a note of this. I need to tell them the story about the database I worked with when I first came to Boeing. All right. We had that situation where there was a field that was actually a mathematical computation based on several other fields, and no one would delete it because nobody knew what it meant. The guy who built it, it was there for a purpose. They knew it needed to be used somewhere, but they had lost the rule, and no one, they kind of were able to figure out after a while what the formula was associated with that, but no one knew the meaning of the rule, you know? And believe it or not, Boeing kept maintaining that data and I bet they still do because they're just scared to delete it now. You know, it was something that should never have been done in the first place. You know, you have a rule and you don't store that data. So I'm sorry, Catherine, I didn't mean to go on a tangent there, but did that answer you a little bit?
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot of like the Excel macros or Excel like conditional formatting that we can do in Excel is very, very similar to
right.
what we do in Access.
You know, that they try really hard to keep their stuff in sync. You know, if there's a formula, if there's a function that makes sense in Excel to be in Access, they give it the same name, they give it the same parameters and all that, you know. But there are obviously functions that work in Excel that we don't have in Access. We don't have VLOOKUP, we don't have HLOOKUP, but we have a DLOOKUP, which works on data tables, okay, or on queries, okay, and I'll show that a little bit toward the end of class, okay. That you know, in concept is a lot like VLOOKUP or HLOOKUP, but it's not the same thing. It has a different mechanics to it. So, and it's mechanics that make sense for the thing that it's been built for, you know, a spreadsheet versus a database, things like that. So, okay. But yeah, there's ample compatibility. You can share data between the two. You can transfer data between the two, which I do a lot, by the way. Okay, I do a lot of things where I first structure it in Excel just to make sure it's something that's viable and I've got all the data elements I want. And then I port that over into Access. You know, I build the table and I receive it over in Access. And I'll show you how to do things like how to import data and how to export data toward the end of class. Okay.
Okay, and then one last question. So I have some experience with C++, and I know with that, like you can write a basic program, it'll spit it out, and it's like very like computer startup screen, black screen with white text kind of thing.
Right.
But then you can get into it further and you can start to make those basic programs look pretty and I guess run separate from
compiled. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that kind of what's going on when you run my compiled files? Okay. I told you, you don't really need to have Access on your computer. Now you do have to have the Microsoft Runtime module to get them to run, but you don't need to have Access. They're compiled. Okay. It's a different kind of compile though. I know you're used to compiling and getting an exe file or what they call an executable. And then all you have to do is have the executable and the thing runs. Okay. Yeah. Unfortunately, Access didn't go that far. Okay. some of the old database languages, they actually compiled. I used to do that all the time. All right. But with Access, you still have to have the runtime module. For a while there, I didn't understand why they didn't have a compiler, but now I realize there's a really good reason why, because it's not just using, believe it or not, Access isn't just Access. It's also parts of the Microsoft Office environment. It's got Microsoft Query in it. They would have to compile in a lot of different software packages, which means they're kind of giving you functionality that they would normally sell anyway, you know. But I mean, when you working this assignment now, you're going to see that you will have a lot of capability to change the look of things on the screen. If you're concerned about aesthetics, you could do a lot of different aesthetics. Okay, we will do that throughout the semester, you know, with reports, with forms and all that. Again, you will see, Catherine, as we go through, this stuff is going to look more and more and more like those applications that you built in C++. They're going to start acting like that. Okay, you'll bring it up. There'll be a menu system that will help you navigate to the forms you want to get to the reports you want to get to. In those reports, you'll do things. There'll be maybe some special functionality, you know, if there's some smarts that you want to build into it. And then you'll get out, and basically what you'll do is you'll run that. You'll open that file and it'll just start running. It won't bring up Microsoft Access. Okay, Access will be in the background, but you won't be able to get to it. Okay, you've basically locked it out, and it's, I should say, the raw access. I mean, you get the functionality of Access without the ability to go in and manipulate the objects, you know, because you don't want people to change your objects after you've got them working, right? You just want them to change the data, and you will always be able to manage the data, even on after we compile it. Okay.
Okay, yeah, that's really cool. Thank you for answering my questions.
You're welcome. No problem. You have a good weekend. Okay.
You too. Bye.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, guys, thank you for sticking around. I appreciate that. I know that you didn't need to be on. I know. Anyway, so boy, that was still a full class, even though I didn't even get to the tutorial. I just, you know, I'm just going to say
Well,
this.
if you don't mind, switch off the recording so we
Oh
can.
yeah. Good